Welcome to Context 101. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Tonight, we examine a Supreme Court decision that's reshaping gun laws across America. The court's ruling on concealed carry doesn't just affect gun owners, it could change daily life in cities and towns nationwide. The debate is deeply personal. For some, it's about self-defense and freedom. For others, it's a threat to public safety. This decision forces states to reconsider how they regulate firearms in public spaces. We'll break down what this means for your community, the legal journey that led here, and the immediate reactions from leaders and advocacy groups. As the country absorbs this ruling, the future of the Second Amendment is once again at the center of national debate. To understand today's ruling, let's look back. The story of gun rights in America is deeply woven into the nation's history, reflecting changing attitudes, legal interpretations, and social priorities over time. The debate over the right to bear arms has always been about more than just weapons. It's about the balance between individual liberty and public safety, and how the Constitution is interpreted in different eras. For centuries, the Second Amendment was tied to state militias, with states setting their own gun laws. The founders wrote the amendment in the late 18th century, when the young nation relied on citizen militias for defense. For much of American history, courts and lawmakers viewed the right to bear arms as connected to service in these militias, not as an unlimited personal right. States had broad authority to regulate who could own or carry firearms, and these laws varied widely across the country. That changed in 2008, with District of Columbia versus Heller, when the Supreme Court recognized an individual's right to possess firearms for self-defense at home. This landmark decision marked a turning point, as the court ruled for the first time that the Second Amendment protects an individual right, not just a collective one tied to militia service. The Heller decision struck down Washington, D.C.'s handgun ban, reshaping the legal landscape and sparking new debates about the limits of gun regulation. 2 years later, McDonald versus Chicago extended this right to state and local governments. The Supreme Court ruled that the Second Amendment applies not just to federal laws, but also to state and city regulations. This meant that local governments could no longer enact outright bans on handguns, and it set a new national standard for gun rights. The decision was celebrated by gun rights advocates and challenged by those who favored stricter gun control. But the court left open the question of carrying guns in public, allowing states to enforce a patchwork of regulations. Some states adopted more permissive laws, making it easier for residents to carry concealed weapons, while others maintained strict requirements or outright bans on public carry. This created a confusing landscape, where the right to carry a gun could depend entirely on where you lived or traveled. Some states required authorities to issue permits to anyone meeting basic criteria. Others, like New York, demanded applicants show a special need. In may-issue states, local officials had broad discretion to deny permits, often requiring applicants to prove they faced unique dangers. This led to frustration among gun owners, who argued that their rights were being unfairly restricted by subjective standards and inconsistent enforcement. Gun rights advocates argued this turned a right into a privilege, setting the stage for another Supreme Court showdown. They organized rallies, filed lawsuits, and lobbied lawmakers, insisting that the right to bear arms should not depend on the whims of local officials. Their efforts kept the issue in the national spotlight, fueling passionate debates and legal challenges across the country. The debate shifted from owning a gun to carrying one, a question the court would soon answer. As more Americans sought permits to carry firearms for personal protection, the legal and political battles intensified. The next Supreme Court decision would not only clarify the scope of the Second Amendment, but also shape the future of gun rights and regulations in the United States. In June 2022, the Supreme Court took up New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. The court struck down New York's requirement that concealed carry applicants show a special need, declaring it unconstitutional. Justice Thomas's majority opinion established a new test gun laws must align with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. This history and tradition test upended modern gun control, prompting lawsuits challenging bans on certain weapons, age restrictions, and more. States scrambled to respond, replacing discretionary permit systems with shall-issue ones and expanding lists of sensitive places where guns are banned. These new laws quickly faced legal challenges, setting the stage for the next Supreme Court case. One such law from Hawaii would soon be at the center of national attention. The case of Woolford versus Lopez challenged Hawaii's sweeping new gun law, which banned firearms in most public and private spaces after Bruin. Plaintiffs argued Hawaii's law made the right to carry meaningless by declaring nearly every public space off-limits. They claimed the law failed the history and tradition test, lacking historical precedent for such broad bans. Hawaii defended its law as necessary for public safety, especially given its dense population and reliance on tourism. The Ninth Circuit sided with Hawaii, but the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, signaling a major decision ahead. The central question: how far can states go in designating sensitive places before infringing on the right to carry? On January 9, 2026, the Supreme Court delivered its highly anticipated verdict in Woolford v. Lopez, a landmark case that quickly became a rallying point for gun rights advocates across the country. The decision was closely watched, with media outlets and legal experts speculating for months about its potential impact on the future of gun regulation in America. As the news broke, crowds gathered outside the Supreme Court, awaiting the outcome that would shape the national conversation on the Second Amendment for years to come. In a 6-3 decision, the court struck down Hawaii's broad restrictions on carrying firearms in public, ruling that the state's laws went too far and violated the core protections of the Second Amendment. The majority opinion emphasized that the right to bear arms extends beyond the home, and that blanket bans on public carry cannot stand without strong historical justification. This ruling sent shockwaves through legal circles and state legislatures alike, as it set a new, more rigorous standard for evaluating gun control laws nationwide. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, writing for the majority, clarified that while states retain the authority to prohibit firearms in truly sensitive places, such as schools, courthouses, and government buildings, Hawaii's sweeping list of restricted locations lacked meaningful historical support. Kavanaugh's opinion drew a clear line. Only restrictions rooted in long-standing tradition would be upheld, and modern expansions without precedent would face intense scrutiny. This approach, he argued, was necessary to preserve the original intent of the Constitution. The ruling clarified, perhaps more explicitly than ever before, that carrying a firearm in public is a fundamental constitutional right. The government, the court said, now bears the burden of proving that any exceptions to this right are firmly grounded in the nation's history and tradition. This marked a significant shift in the legal landscape, making it much harder for states to justify broad or novel restrictions on public carry. For gun owners and advocates, the decision was a resounding affirmation of their rights. However, the dissenting justices issued a stark warning. They argued that the majority's decision would inevitably lead to more guns in more public places, increasing the risks to public safety and making it harder for states to address gun violence. The dissenters expressed deep concern that the ruling would tie the hands of lawmakers and law enforcement, potentially putting communities at greater risk. The immediate impact of the decision was felt far beyond Hawaii. Similar laws in states like California and New York were instantly invalidated, forcing those states to roll back broad bans on carrying guns in public spaces. Legislators scrambled to revise their statutes, while legal challenges to other restrictive laws gained new momentum. The ruling set off a wave of legal and political activity, as states across the country re-evaluated their approach to gun regulation in light of the court's new standard. In the wake of Woolford v. Lopez, the landscape for concealed carry in America had fundamentally changed. Millions of Americans found themselves newly empowered to carry firearms in public, while state governments faced the challenge of balancing public safety with constitutional rights. The decision marked a turning point in the nation's ongoing debate over the Second Amendment, with consequences that would ripple through courts, legislatures, and communities for years to come. The ruling sparked fierce reactions nationwide. Gun rights groups celebrated it as a victory for constitutional freedom, while gun control advocates and Democratic leaders condemned it as dangerous and radical. Urban mayors warned the decision would make it harder to combat gun violence in crowded public spaces. Law enforcement responses were mixed. Some welcomed the clarity, others feared new challenges in policing. Businesses now face tough choices: allow guns and risk alienating some customers, or ban them and face backlash from gun owners. The ruling forces private businesses into the heart of the gun debate, with new policies and signs likely to appear across the country. The national conversation on guns had entered a new phase. Politically, the decision has sent shockwaves through the nation, energizing both supporters and opponents of gun rights. The ruling has become a rallying cry, intensifying the already heated debate over the Second Amendment and public safety. Democrats are seizing the moment to push for stricter gun control measures, using the decision to mobilize their base and highlight the need for legislative action. They argue that the ruling puts communities at risk and are calling for new laws to address gun violence. Meanwhile, Republicans are celebrating the decision as a major victory for constitutional freedoms, framing it as a necessary protection of individual rights. They emphasize the importance of upholding the Second Amendment and resisting what they see as government overreach. The ruling is likely to become a central issue in upcoming elections, especially in swing districts where candidates must navigate a deeply divided electorate. In these areas, voters are split, with some demanding stronger gun laws and others insisting on the right to bear arms. Politicians will face tough questions and may be forced to clarify their positions more than ever before. Socially, the country may become even more polarized, as passionate advocates on both sides clash in public forums, online spaces, and even within families and communities. States and businesses are responding by crafting their own patchwork of gun policies, leading to a complex landscape where laws and regulations can vary dramatically from one place to another. The increased visibility of firearms in public spaces could heighten anxiety for many Americans, prompting changes in daily routines, travel plans, and even where people choose to shop or dine. This is especially true in states unaccustomed to open carry, where the sight of armed individuals may be jarring and spark heated local debates. Economically, the firearm industry could experience significant growth, with increased demand for guns, ammunition, and related services. Manufacturers and retailers may see a surge in business as more people seek to exercise their rights. However, states that rely heavily on tourism may face new challenges, as some travelers could be deterred by looser gun laws or concerns about safety in public spaces. Major corporations are also taking notice, with some reconsidering where to expand or invest based on the evolving legal landscape. Companies may weigh the risks and benefits of operating in states with differing gun regulations. Ultimately, this landmark decision is reshaping not just the law, but the very fabric of American society. Politically, socially, and economically, the effects will ripple through every aspect of daily life, influencing how Americans interact, do business, and participate in democracy. The debate over guns is now more visible and more contentious than ever, ensuring that this issue will remain at the forefront of the national conversation for years to come. Legal scholars are sharply divided on the Woolford versus Lopez decision. Supporters say the court restored substance to the right to carry, preventing states from undermining it with endless restrictions. They argue the ruling brings clarity and consistency, ending the patchwork of state laws. Critics call it a radical expansion, accusing the court of ignoring modern realities in public safety. They warn the history and tradition test is unworkable, forcing states to follow outdated norms. Some fear the court is acting as a super legislature for gun policy, overriding democratic choices. Both sides agree, the decision will spark years of litigation and debate. The legal landscape for gun rights and regulation is now more uncertain than ever. The Supreme Court's ruling in Woolford versus Lopez has redrawn the lines in America's gun debate. States like California, New York, and Hawaii must now rewrite their laws, sparking new legal and political battles. Private businesses face tough decisions about their own firearm policies. Public spaces, from parks to malls, are now the front lines of the gun debate. The ruling reflects a nation deeply divided on safety, freedom, and the meaning of the Second Amendment. The conversation moves from the courtroom to state houses, city councils, and boardrooms. This is not the end, but the start of a new chapter in America's ongoing struggle over guns, rights, and responsibilities. The choices we make next will shape the future of public life in America.